Hello, Christal Marshall here, and I really want you to listen to this talk. It was very eye-opening. It really confirms a lot of decisions that I made early on when I was really trying to figure out what kind of curriculum and what kind of emphasis that I wanted. And I've tried everything from online, virtual, to time for learning, to Me Academy, to workbook, to learning virtually online, to Khan Academy. I've tried a lot of stuff with my kids, and what I've discovered is there needs to be a balance between analog activities and virtual activities. And I really like studying how other cultures do it. What are the top schools in the world doing for education? And what you find out when you're doing research is many of them are doing analog activities now in a 21st century world. So going back to real physical books, going back to workbooks, going back to nature, going back to hands-on life skills, creating, like learning the trades, like wood shop or mechanics or hands-on or, pottery or art or whatever. And so a lot of these top executives in Silicon Valley are actually taking their kids out of the regular school system and putting them in Waldorf schools. And if you are not familiar with Waldorf, it's very nature-based, student-led, hands-on, no technology, because they've seen the negative effects of technology. And if you study one of the top school systems in the world, Finland, they're still doing analog activities with their kids and pretty much not using as much technology in their schools, and yet they're performing very high rates. So I really want you to hear this and see that I have to physically make sure there are piles in my house of activities, Play-Doh, Legos, blocks, science kits that come to the house. We have to have a yard to play in. We have to have things to interact with. We have to have craft kits for them to build, cooking kits for them to make. I have to supervise all of these activities. So it is very parent heavy. And in one season of my life when I was working more full time, traveling and doing wedding photography, I couldn't do this. And so I did do the virtual stuff in that season because I just didn't have time. So I understand how there is a drawback to both. There is a cost to both. But I am trying to emphasize going to a physical library a couple times a week, going to a physical bookstore a couple times a week, having them pick out physical books for them to do, having audiobooks play while they're learning or growing or making something or building something or whatever. And I know that is a cost of that, of going to those places, making sure we go to physical parks, making sure that we have a yard in the backyard, whatever. I know that that is an obstacle for many parents. So I'm not saying, you can't educate your kids correctly without these things. But for me personally, I really like this aspect, the slower educational aspect for me. I'm really liking this in this season, and I'm seeing the benefits of it. But I really want you guys to listen to this. I think it's going to be really eye-opening.
Because our schools are stuffed full of ed tech, and a lot of it is gamified. Hey, let's teach kids math. Let's gamify it. Let's make it a fun game where they get rewards. Yeah. If you do that, you'll get more engagement, but there's a cost. The more activities we give our kids that lead them to quick dopamine, which is you do something simple, you get a reward. Do something simple, get a reward, like a slot machine, like social media. You never know what's going to come, but sometimes it's good. If you gamify a quarter of a kid's day, their brain, that's a lot of quick dopamine. The brain is going to react by downregulating dopamine neurons so that they're less sensitive to dopamine. Yeah. You now have, and so now when you take away the gamification, now they're in a deficit state, which means everything is boring and unpleasant.
The human body is the master at homeostasis.
That's right.
So if you bring it up, it must bring itself down.
Not on everything, but on anything that involves dopamine, yes, absolutely. If you think about what you might call quick dopamine versus slow dopamine. So slow dopamine is, suppose a boy sets out to build a treehouse or a racing car or whatever, and he works on it and works on it. Every time he makes progress, that's rewarding. Yeah. Okay, but you're going towards the goal. You're keeping focused. Now, this is what executive function is. Executive function is the ability to say, here's my goal. Here's what I have to do to it. I'm going to do the hard work. Along the way, I get rewards for making progress. And when I'm done, it feels so good.
Yeah, delayed gratification.
That's right. So that's all really good. But what I'm coming to see is I underestimated what's happening to boys. The boys, it starts with the video games, which is really quick dopamine. It's incredibly intense. They're beautiful. They're exciting. A little bit is okay. I don't want to cause a panic here on video games. But if your kid is playing 3 hours of video games a day, 7 days a week, probably that's going to have dopamine effects. And then the kid is going to
The
find
rest of their life can compete.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
Because they're in a state of deficit.
Yeah.
And so everything else is more boring. And so then we have to ramp it up. Okay, they're in school, they're bored. Let's give them gamified math.
Yeah.
And we'll give them gamified this and that. And let's let them keep their phones on them, which is insane.
Yeah.
A study just came out from Dimitri Kostakis. On average, American students, I think it was high school, spend an hour and a half a day in school on their phone. So if you gamify, then the rest of life is incredibly boring. And that includes talking to people.